Welcome to the Dance Reel podcast. I'm Kate Histon. To be part of our community, subscribe or follow this channel. This episode was sponsored by Master Dancer Mindset. Know yourself, be yourself, and express yourself on and off the stage. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking with Cindy Ambridge. Cindy is an ex-professional dancer, founder of Class for the Heart, and specializes in consent and boundary setting in the dance and film industry. Today we'll be focusing on how teachers and studio owners can enhance their awareness and skills in consent and boundary setting for dance students, what that looks like, what that means for better safe dance practice. A very enlightening and educational episode. Welcome, Cindy.
It is lovely to be here.
I was really excited to have you on because a friend of mine, Jen Murray, hi Jen, who was watching the podcast from Australia, wrote to me and said, love this episode. And I wrote to her back and I said, Jen, I'm after some sort of a facilitator. I want to focus more on safe dance practice in terms of boundaries and how we can all do it a little bit better with our communication skills. Do you know anyone? And she said, I've just finished this fantastic course with Cindy Ambridge. And she gave me your details. I stalked you online, wrote to you, and straight away you were like, yep, let's do this.
Yes.
And so here we are. I'd love to get your expert advice and opinion today on boundaries in dance studios and what consent is and what that looks like.
Okay, so I will share a few, little acronyms because students in Australia now, as part of the Australian curriculum in schools, have to do consent training. So they're already aware of that word, but they learn in terms of real life relationships, like romantic relationships. Mm-hmm. And they're often taught from the Planned Parenthood perspective, who came up with the FRIES acronym. They explain that consent in those situations should be freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. But the enthusiasm aspect isn't always relevant to other life situations. And the example I always share is going to the dentist, because I'm never enthusiastic, but I am definitely consenting. And so the same can happen in performing arts contexts. You might not be enthusiastic about, say you're a drama student, doing a particular scene where you've got to get all angry, but it doesn't mean that you're not consenting to that. So in the performing arts world, I believe it's being led more with film and television, the acronym in use is CRISP. So considered, reversible, informed, specific, and participatory. So there's no enthusiasm, which is good because we can be out of our comfort zone. We can be challenged, but I guess it's more like uncomfortable is not unsafe. When a person's feeling like it's unsafe, a boundary's being crossed, then that's when students need to speak up. So I think for me, one of the big things is this idea of considered. In other words, there's got to be time given to students to consider what they're consenting to. So in class, it would likely be something like instructional touch, which is valuable. I'm not here to say it shouldn't happen, because some students really value it and like learning that way. And if it's within a teacher's boundaries, great. But being able to give them the heads up that this is going to, if you're open to it, happen today. It might be a ballet class. Today, I'm going to work on arm positioning. So if you're open to instructional touch, I'm probably going to just use my hands, maybe guide your arm or whatnot, just so we can work on the shape. It could be that you offer students, they position themselves on different bars based on, yep, I'm open today. No, I'm not. Because consent is different to permission, which I think is often discussed. I see it in definitions. I've seen it in sporting definitions. It's permission to. But permission is a one-off, and I think students have an understanding of permission in terms of like a permission form that they take home to their parents, or I've got to get permission from my mum and dad for something. And so One, it's being asked by someone else, not themselves, which of course we know that parents are the ones that ultimately are legally offering the consent for things. But we're talking here about, in a situation, a student giving their willingness and their okay for something. So yeah, permission is that kind of one-off, and it's also often the yes or no, where consent, if we're asking questions the right way, we can get a spectrum of answers. We're giving students the ability to say yes, no, yes, but I need you to do this, or maybe if you could do this. So consent is temporary. It can't be assumed, and it changes like exercise to exercise, lesson to lesson.
And in the dance studio, the students could be having multiple teachers, so it can't be assumed that the same is from one teacher through to all the others.
Yes. And I think that brings up a good point, that consent isn't, I mean, it's about the person, and often a no, like we're not used to hearing no, particularly in the dance world. It's a yes and what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Because dance is so, if you're working in the professional realm, it's really gig-based. You go from job to job, so you better not be difficult.
Yeah.
You better just say yes. And so, yeah, I think understanding that it's about a student and what they need in that moment, not taking it personally if you get a no. Like a no is a good, thank you for sharing, and feeling like it's a good thing that a person feels comfortable to share a no with you. Like that really means if you do get no's, you're creating that space where they can voice opinions.
And how can we as teachers, and there's some studio owners out there, encourage students to say no? Because we're always wanting them to say yes, right?
Yes.
It's like, yes, I'm going to come forward. And that positive attitude, we really reward that. But
Yes.
how can we also reward when students want to say no and encourage them to do that?
I think we, one, have to reflect on our own thoughts, because it does make it difficult. Say you're creating some partner work and you'd set up this lovely culture of consent, and a student said, oh, it's a no to that movement, but a yes to that one. Yeah, naturally, sometimes face would drop, and, how do we actually take a no? And for me, something that I remind myself of is we're often forced to think outside the box, go to our second, third creative choice. So in the end, a no can be a really good way to get some innovation and take you further than what you were going to go creatively. I think also having conversations. I know myself, until I certified for film and television, I didn't know how to ask, or I was very hands-off because I was afraid. Oh, I better not touch, where I don't think we have to be. If we've got process, it's a good thing to share with our students, and they can be practicing performing arts type consent, which is going to lead and be beneficial in their real life. But definitely having those conversations so you can say no. You don't have to say yes. Here are all the different ways that we can still learn together in class. But yeah, just talking about it and definitely giving those options. Like I said, you could have positioning on a bar. Different rows are open to instructional touch. Asking in the middle of class, okay, who would like a correction, a physical correction now for this exercise? But it's all about that communication, not assuming that, well, I'm in dance, so you're going to be touched, basically. And them understanding they don't have to be.
And what about consent also in terms of like verbal communication and instruction that might feel coercive for...
Yeah, I think, again, it comes down to that, if someone says no, or how you're approaching them if you're asking the question, because body language gives away so much. I think we're 80% visual, 20% verbal, usually in our, like how we receive information or something like that. So if you are really open to the whatever is best for my students, your approach is going to show that. But in terms of questioning, open-ended questions is really the key. It's hard to get into the habit because often we're asking about what we want to do. Can I? Is it okay if I? And that gives the yes, no answer where we want to have a conversation. So what are your thoughts on? Tell me what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
The open-ended is really the key to perhaps giving that leeway of they're going to think about it because it isn't just yes, no.
Yeah, that's very good. And it also makes me think from a choreographer teacher perspective. I love teaching contemporary, and sometimes I love a level of collaboration in terms of if I'm creating a piece, I love the student input. And at some schools since I've sold my school and teaching, some students aren't used to that. It's like, you meant to tell us what to do, like you give us the choreography, and it's like, well, no, because sometimes for me as well, especially with the senior students, the beauty of bringing their creativity and artistry to life is by having them collaborate as well with things like practicing improvisation and getting them to use their body in space that's not me choreographing for them. And it's what do you feel like? I'm teaching over here in Germany, and a beautiful school I'm teaching at I absolutely love and adore. The senior students have struggled with this, yet they love the challenge, and so I'm saying this is about you now as the artist, and I like that we can do that in dance, and it would be nice in the industry to see that coming also in a space in terms of our teacher-student relationship, in all of it, in studios, if we don't, what can happen? Like, what's the risk of, my first thoughts are it can also help continue with this power over dynamic where the teacher is the authority, and that is a very archaic way of teaching, in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've taught a lot in high schools, so we teach about not just the performance aspect, but the choreography aspect and different dance companies. And so I've shared a lot where there is the collaborative approach. Expressions Dance Company used to, I did a workshop and they took us through the process that their dancers, and it was to do with maybe, I think, the Brisbane floods, and they had dancers bring in something that was valuable to them, and then they experimented with it as a prop and then took it away, and then that became the movement. So yeah, I don't think that does happen a lot in the studio setting, maybe because group performances, what is the aim? Often it's to take it to the stage and it's the win. But without the dancers, you don't have the routine. So yes, definitely seeing that everyone in the room is needed and as valuable as one another. It isn't just the person who's creating anything for their vision.
Yes.
I mean, their vision can be wonderful, but yeah, we can all learn from each other, definitely.
Yeah. So with regard to consent and moving that into costuming and, say, Stedfords and performing on stage, I'm thinking now about backstage getting dressed, appropriateness of dance costumes. Tell me your thoughts on that one.
Okay. Well, in terms of the backstage thing, I know I grew up in the studio and as a performer where it was, you kind of just took your gear off, quick changes, it became a part of it. But essentially, are we asking the question to students? Because some may be perfectly okay with that, and we're not the ones necessarily that have to be deciding for them, but are we asking the questions? Are we providing alternatives like the change tents? I know, again, I've been to competitions where there are all genders in the same room, which, okay, do we want to get into the taking up a top layer of the upper body? Does it matter what gender? No, it doesn't. But we've got things happening in the room that are making other people uncomfortable. Like, I definitely think options should be provided. And potentially looking towards that little bit of legislation in terms of an indecent exposure. Is that the removal of an upper layer?
Yeah.
And is that something we've really got to start to look to in the dance world a little bit more? Costuming, I think if I'm looking at the processes in the film and television world, actors are being asked about what it is that they wear. Obviously, it's more to do with if there is exposure of the body that is not probably normal in terms of a bathing suit or something.
For me, coming from the dance teacher studio past life space, I really had a thing, and this may not be something to do with consent, but I really did have a thing with seeing young children in crop tops and little shorts. And even, to be honest, the senior students, I avoided that at all costs. But little kids, it was like, no, I don't want them looking like they're wearing swimmers, and then and also the choreography in terms of that, because everything had to be age appropriate, and because they're unaware of that. Little 6-year-old is just having fun, and it's my responsibility to make sure that they're dressed appropriately.
I had an experience with my daughter who's at a studio. One of her fellow students, her parents did have a problem with the crop top, and I think they may have gone out and bought their own tan coverage. Yeah. Myself, I was always aware of students going to feel comfortable. If you're looking in terms of linking back to consent, how we can obtain consent is through their affirmation. So words is one thing, but also being able to check into body language and words and posture and breath.
Yeah.
If someone's standing hunched over, tugging at a costume, arms crossed, they're probably not really happy with that costume. Are you a teacher that goes, oh, well, that's what I did, or that's just how it is, or hey, that's just what we're wearing? Then you're not going to worry, but that's what maybe we could start considering a little more. And of course, where dancers dressed in these costumes, the images end up. I mean, the internet. You often will see a leg mount, and the crutch area is really out there. And this is, in terms of legislation, an indecent image is considered one where genitalia is only covered by one layer, at least in Queensland anyway. And so, we know that the intent of that image isn't to be indecent, but there's a reason that legislation is out there that talks about, for example, a child in underwear also is not ideal. There's a real fine line between the dance underwear as a costume and actual underwear. And do we want to maybe take that into consideration a little bit more?
And I know a few, as an Australian dance judge, there are quite a few Stedfords now that are getting even more strict on making sure all students wear tights. And I'm actually all for it. I know that there's a trend to not do that. And to have the leg line all bare, and especially for the older girls. But I don't know if it's needed. They're not professional yet. They're not in a company yet. They're not, know.
But a lot of the time in the professional world, you're wearing fishnets. They are wearing tights. I know not maybe in all contemporary companies where we're often seeing the no tights in the contemporary routines, but sometimes you're seeing it in jazz routines where I'm like, how much connection to the industry is there? I think we've got to look to the good things going on in the industry and try and link to that. It's the same as with, for me, what I feel are extreme displays of flexibility. I don't know the last time, like I went to, over Christmas, to see the Rockettes, world famous. I did not see any sort of kick past the 180. They were wearing fishnets, and that's a really well-known professional show. Can we link as much as we can to what we're seeing in the professional world?
Something that I always used to have when I had my dance school at the beginning of the year, in the last 5 years, I'd say, of owning my school for 23 years, I became really just aware of safe dance practice on a whole new level. We had Children of the Guardian were active, and we were doing those courses on how to make sure that children are protected. And so as part of that, we had clear boundaries in our contracts. Teachers, it wasn't their role to create connections with students outside of the dance school,
Yes.
same as
Yeah.
high school. And I was very big on that, just to have that boundary. So that's one area I wouldn't mind discussing. But also, you don't know if you're going to go and correct if a child has actually had trauma in their life, and if they're super sensitive to being touched, and then the body will indicate, as you said, 80% of communication is actually nonverbal. So trauma is stored in the body. How is it stored in the body? And if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes. So I myself, I love knowledge. So I've read a great book, The Body Keeps the Score. And he explains that trauma often, it could be a physical event or a psychological thing, but it is totally stored in the body. So the example I would use, not that it's trauma, but when you're stressed, you often feel tense muscles. So that's a psychological event and it's impacting your body. So the same in terms of trauma, you will have tension, you will have maybe shortness of breath. You're in a state of stress and you're in the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight. Yeah. So it's interesting in terms of, yes, we don't know our students' lived experience, and yes, there's fight, flight. Freeze is also well known, but there is a new response which is fawn. So fawn is where people just do whatever to get by, to survive. They're almost pleasing the person. So if we are not asking students, how do we know that they're not fawning?
Yeah.
That they're just going along because of the yes and, because they want to get picked for the solo. They don't want to be difficult, so not a problem, but they're actually activated or triggered a little bit by touch. And it's not necessarily because you're touching in a way that is even representative of what's happened to them. It could be there's an association. You could look like someone that's done something to them before. It's again back to that idea of not assuming, asking, because we just, touch is important and it's beautiful. It's natural, but when we're teaching and correcting, we're not in a natural relationship. We do have that power dynamic.
Yes.
So we've got to understand that it is difficult for them to say no or not today.
Yeah. When I've spoken on this podcast before that in my first 10 years, I spent 10 years at a dance school. The teacher, super well known, she's passed away now. She was, she was abusive. And so I definitely developed fawning. Fawning was one of my responses. And then I had an overly zealous dance mum. And so I'd come off stage, and a lovely woman, but I think back then just naive to what her role was as a parent, in terms of, because it was a high pressure ballet school, so I'd come off stage and not, oh, that was beautiful. It was like, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that, and so I experienced that. And as I've mentioned before, Mum and she's like, I wish I didn't do that. I'm like, I know, it's fine. So we've moved and healed through all of that. But at the time there was that there, and then there was this dance school and the pressure, and I didn't there was no space for me. And that's what it felt like. And my coping mechanism was to fawn. It was survival. So it was people pleasing, wanting to make sure that I've got friends, being super hyper vigilant. And I now can see, as a teacher and looking back, I can see students that super people pleasers. They're wanting to show up. They want to give you their best. And how we as teachers respond to that and reward it. Oh, it's cool, they're good. And I look back and go, oh, is that? And I'm not saying it is. I am generalising, but I can look back at some and go, I wonder if that was survival, because something else is happening. Something else in their life and in their background has happened. And so I'm just thinking now as a teacher, it's very important to be aware of that. Try and approach teaching in a holistic way.
Yes. Yeah. Which this is what really Class for the Heart is all about, is
Yeah.
I think there's so much body focus in dance, and
Mm.
we've got to balance it with the mindset training, and you can do both at the same time. Like
Yeah.
breath for me is so undertaught and
Mm.
undertrained. I wasn't really taught anything about breath. I didn't for a long time until I did my yoga teacher training,
Yeah.
because it's all about connecting breath and movement,
Mm.
because breath will impact your emotions. So, chest breathing up here, really shallow.
Mm.
People do that naturally because they're in the habit, because of how they sit every day. And that's
Yeah.
linked to anxiety. So even checking in on students to build their diaphragm, which is true core stability, to get breathing full and expansive, that's going to have benefit to their emotional regulation, but also the core stability. Breath is important for muscle relaxation when we're stretching. Breath is important for stamina. So many things, but in the dance world, we're so used to, we hold breath when we're trying to hold our leg. We struggle when we're stretching. We're going against our bodies. So definitely, that's what I'm really passionate, is the holistic education, balancing mind and body. Because at the end of the day, like, I'm sure you've seen students, I've seen students, they can do the fouette turns, but they're not confident. They're really critical of themselves. And even if they get picked for the solo, they get the perfect exam result, that doesn't bring joy. Like, we've got to go inwards a little bit to counteract the exterior focus in dance that is there. It's so much on perfection and what you can do, rather than sometimes the process of that and the positive psychology. And being compassionate, not punishing your body, but listening to it, all those things.
And success sometimes in itself can actually be very stressful, because it's like, once you've gotten that level, it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to outdo myself now? Like, it's not about those external things, but who am I as a dancer in this industry?
Yeah. Because I think we also can get caught up as, that's who I am, is a dancer. No, you're disciplined, you're creative, you're expressive. Like, what qualities do you have, not what can you do? I think I've said before in some of the classes I teach, it's like, wouldn't it be nice if instead of saying like, so what do you do, if you said something like, so who are you? You know, when you meet someone, because we're so focused on the doing, not the being, I think.
Yeah. When I was 16, had a panic disorder and had like a bit of a mental health breakdown. And then I went on this little healing journey. And as part of that, I studied breath and body work for a year. I was only 17, and I found this beautiful husband-wife couple facilitator. I went to workshops and did a year of breath and body work, transformational breath and body work. And I think it saved me. It was so healing, and it allowed all of those suppressed parts of myself just to cry, and permission, and felt completely loved and supported to start this process of who am I, after feeling like I'm a dancer to please everyone else.
Yes.
And so that's really interesting.
Breath is also, if you think, it's like the connection from the outside to the inside. So it is so special. And, you know, when often you're saying to someone, oh, calm down, you're actually saying, can you just slow your breathing down? Like, that's really what you're telling them to do, is just get back into that parasympathetic nervous system. But back to talking about, you know, pleasing, if you look at dance, being unique isn't really valued when you're at the Rockettes. I used to say this all the time to my dancers, we could be the Rockettes.
Yeah.
Because that perfect unison, we're not used to finding ourselves. We're trying to be like everyone else, which we can't be. We're all unique. And that's how I like, for example, when we're, you know, moving or stretching, I teach classes where your shape's going to be a bit different to someone else, because we're not all the same. Even when it comes to our flexibility, we're all different. So let's not, as teachers, for example, just give that one position, like showing and connecting to where am I feeling that in my body? Like, how do I need to move in that way for me? Getting back to individuality, which is then powerful for your performance anyway.
That's beautiful. Yeah, really, really lovely. And what are your thoughts on, because you are a school teacher, you're also a dance judge. You've done some judging work. You're an ex-professional dancer. You're a dance mum, dance teacher. You're everything. So you actually are right in the hub of the industry right now. What are your thoughts on boundaries with teachers and students outside of the dance studio? I like that at school there's really good boundaries in the school system, but in the dance studio, it's like they've got their own set of rules.
Yes.
I know at my school you were not allowed to hang out with your students socially. I felt that was really inappropriate and creates favourites and a power over situation.
Yes, I feel like you are very ahead of your time. All of that, really, like all of these things that are coming into the industry, I mean, you've been doing. That's so good. I agree. I think from that high school teacher perspective, you cannot be friends on social media. You cannot have numbers. Like, you have to contact even through student email addresses, like their school email addresses. And that's how I grew up. It was like the teacher was a bit separate, which, I mean, does that reinforce the power hierarchy? I don't know. But I think with social media in particular, we've really started to just blur the lines where, guest artists come to a studio, all the teachers, and then they're following that student, but they're not that other one, or they're giving a shout out to one student and their birthday, but not the others. I think consistency is what is needed, but I definitely am myself a person who is like, boundaries, I think, are important, a separation, because as teachers, we're providing a service essentially. And consistency, unless we can offer the same to everyone, that is going to have impact for that dancer that doesn't get the birthday shout out, that, doesn't get featured on Insta at the end of class. You know?
I think that's really important. I even have, over here in Germany, I do 3 days a week of German school, and we're all in a WhatsApp group, the students and the teacher. And I wouldn't normally message a teacher separately. And I think the teacher's only 2 years older than me. And I have a situation where I'm going away judging in South Africa for 2 weeks, and over here, they're really, really strict. And I thought, I'm not going to put this on the group with everyone. And if I go to German school, my German teacher doesn't speak English, and my German I'm not skilled enough to speak her level to explain why I'm going. And so anyway, I wrote to her separately, privately, apologized and said, I'm not going to make a habit of this. But I felt, and this was not because I fear her, this is actually because I respect her. And I want to feel like she is my teacher, and I don't feel like she's better than me as a person. I feel like, no, she's my teacher, and that's an honor. And so I wrote to her, and she was lovely. But in myself, I thought, well, no, she's not my mate. She's not my friend. I'm not going to, even though, I'm actually, no, she's 1 year older than me. And we all know, because as part of the German, the introductions that's part of how I know, is because we have to say, wie alt bist du? Ich bin 44 Jahre alt. Like, so that's how I know her age. Ordinarily, I wouldn't know her age, so it's all, everyone's. So I reflected on that in the teacher-student. I think, well, you could say that's a hierarchy, but no, I don't. It's how can we as teachers that are teaching teenagers and young students, where students can feel that they can trust their teacher, look up to their teacher, but still feel empowered to say no. And that all has to come down for the teacher being self-aware and creating safety within the class and the framework, so that the student can feel okay to go, excuse me, I need to go to the toilet, or, I'm feeling unwell today. Not fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to, I can't be sick, or I can't. All those little things. for me, I think that a really clever teacher is one that can create that environment. And it's not always easy, but yeah, it's an art in itself, I think.
Yes, because one of those power dynamics is that referent, you really like the person. I think
Yes.
that is, and you don't want to let down.
You don't want to disappoint them. Yeah.
But I think well-being is just becoming more in focus. Now in Australia, we've got psychosocial responsibilities in workplaces, which is coming back to workload and things like that. So yeah, understanding human first. We can still be disciplined. We can still be goal-oriented as a student, and as a teacher, we can still be firm. I don't know if that's the right word,
No,
but we can still have our standards,
yeah.
but we can be gentle and we can be human in that experience, not perfect.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's a case sometimes people are worried about, oh, people are going to slack off or people are going to get away with stuff. And I guess some people will. But I think any of these processes that we're talking about with better communication and really trying to be consent aware, it benefits everyone and it benefits the people that need it who might have that trauma that we were talking about before. That's really what we're maybe doing it for. Most people probably do not have a problem with touch, but we just don't know.
Yeah.
But for that one that does,
Yeah.
isn't it amazing that we can give to them an opportunity where they go, okay, I'm not going to walk out of class and I'm all unregulated because something's happened, but I don't want to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think that looks like? Say, for example, we have a dance performance group that's about to do an Eisteddfod, and there's a level of pressure, of expectation for it to be stage ready. What can we expect of teachers and students, and what pushing too far looks like, and how a teacher can regulate their own emotions so that they're still creating the outcome that they want without making the performance about their own ego, in terms of at what point do we creatively hand over the baby of our choreography to the students and go, all right, it's ready. I've done all I can. It's completely yours now. It's yours now.
Yeah. I think it's hard because often what we put on the stage, it's a representation of us. And then there's finance and business associated with that. And we all have egos. I think for myself, when I feel pressure, I try and remind myself, this moment doesn't define me. That outcome, that Eisteddfod win, it doesn't define me. Because I think life, all of us, the student in the studio who thinks, if I get picked, I'm going to feel really good and confident. The dance teacher going, when I am choreographing for that show, I'm going to feel, it's like we talked before, you're always then going, oh, now what? Oh, now what? Okay, I got there. Oh, there's something else I've got to aspire to, and just really all of humanity trying to, like I do, remind myself that looking to that thing, how do we know we actually want it if we've never had it? But we're so sure we want it. Just, enjoying the process. And also, again, it comes maybe from the yoga training I've done. It's that we only have this moment right now. So enjoy this moment right now.
Yeah, it's funny. I know when I had my school, I look back, I hired a church hall and another hall for 16 years. And then after that, I had my own purpose-built studio. It didn't make me happier. And that was always the goal, to have my own amazing space. I could do what I want with it. And every day for the first 16 years that I'd go teach, I would sweep and mop the floor, because I shared this church hall with lots of day groups. So they'd bring in the mud and I'd also get homeless people sleeping at the church around the corner. So I also had to check out their mental health and to have conversations with the minister of creating the safe space. And maybe can they come and sleep after class, like when we're wrapped up? And so we had an agreement with the minister there that he would, which was tough, challenging conversations. But reflecting back, having the big, beautiful dance space, it did not make me happier as a person. It was beautiful. No. I feel very lucky to have experienced that and worked really hard to get there, really, really hard. But yeah, it doesn't buy happiness.
No.
It created more pressure, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's teaching teenagers, you see they want that, or the disappointment when you're placing a routine, and it's, all of that stuff, the self-doubt, the critique, you've got to do the work internally, really. And it doesn't mean we don't feel disappointed, but I think that's what we all need to do a little bit more. And particularly if you look at social media now, it's the first time we can compare ourselves literally to people around the world. When I learnt dance, if I wanted to look at another dancer, it was at an Eisteddfod, or it was in a movie or on TV. It wasn't a scrolling that I could see 24/7 of other people doing things that I couldn't do. You know, our selfies, we're always looking at ourselves, not inwards. And I think particularly with dance, I've mentioned it, the perfectionism and the body focus, we've really got to try and balance with a little bit of inward stuff.
Yeah. So segueing back with the teacher and the side stage and the letting their baby go, I've noticed over the years, I can say I've personally never done it because it's something that probably hurts my soul from my upbringing. I won't. So I was really big on when your students come off stage, just hold space for them, like love them, however they performed. And it would really make me upset when I would see some teachers' behaviours really getting stuck into their students for not doing this, that, or the other. And I think, I'm going to sound so judgy right now. This is my scar. But I think, you egomaniac. This is not about you. This is not about you. This is about them. And at what part did you think standing side stage, facilitating them, was actually about you? Because it stopped being about you. The moment you drove to the Eisteddfod or the performance, it was never about you. It's always about them. And so I try and not be judgy and be compassionate. And I think as I've gotten older and I've seen it, I've been more compassionate and not triggered. But as I had my school and I'd train younger teachers, and I once had a younger teacher who I let choreograph the piece for the seniors, and they did, the first time they performed this piece, it didn't go to plan. Something happened and it was unfortunate, and I could feel, she was sitting next to me, I could feel her disappointment, and I actually could feel her aggression like boiling. She didn't go into sadness, or she just went, and I just put my hand, I go, breathe. Let go. This isn't about you right now. It's about them. They've got this. It's theirs. It's not yours. It's not yours. I know that's really hard, and it's so hard because you feel so attached. And for her, this is like this is her opportunity. You know, the first time she's choreographed for a performance troupe, and you know, and it's like going, ugh. And it wasn't even bad. They showed that they recovered well, and they were very creative. And I just had to say, don't rub salt in the wound when we go back there. Hold space for them.
I often, it's, what do you think you did well? What do you think you can improve on? Because I think it's important. Like, I'm very reflective.
The open questions,
I will always look back at how could I have done that better? So, and I think from dance, what came first, the dance or the perfectionism? But I'm a bit of a perfectionism. So I'm always reflective, and I do like to have students do that, like what was good, what was bad. But I listened to someone called Peter Crone.
He's great.
Yes, and so he is all about life is presenting you with those opportunities because you're still not free yet. You're still caught in the ego. You're still worried about I'm not enough.
Yeah.
And that's what I try and remind myself when I'm a little bit like, oh, I didn't get that thing, or, oh, I'm really wanting to move this forward and it's not happening. You know, like with this consent and the workshops I'm offering, it is sometimes like, oh, okay, I'm wanting a little bit more engagement. But I'm like, okay, remind myself, I'm enjoying the process. It's not defining who I am. It's showing me an opportunity of, am I doubting myself right now? Is there something I need to work on? So that's what I tell myself.
Oh, and it's so needed though what you do in the industry. It's so needed, and it's one of those things that I wouldn't say it's before. I think we're ready. We're really, really ready, and we need it. but teachers need to not be in denial anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it takes investing in your own longevity, your mental health, your teachers, your staff, and the bigger picture of creating change in the industry. Way back in 2011, was it? A Sydney teacher was arrested for inappropriate stuff.
Yes.
That was awful. It was absolutely awful.
Yes.
He's in jail, and the industry was shocked. And children, then there's new education about safe dance and after-school activities. And I think let's get ahead of the game and keep evolving instead of waiting for something terrible like that to happen before we all improve what we're doing and educate ourselves even more.
Yeah, I agree. There was a shock when that and the Royal Commission and things were happening, but there hasn't been really, I don't think, a lot of change. I can go into studios and places and I'm not always asked for a blue card.
Yeah.
And that was, I
wouldn't
think,
have
one of
happened
the
at
big
mine.
things.
You were going.
And that's, it's different. And I think for me, I am a person who I want to cover myself as much as I can because you just don't know an accusation that could come your way. And if you've got nothing in place that goes, well, no, like this is what I've done, that leaves you open to risk. So it's, for me, what I talk about in the workshops that I'm doing is, our intention, if we are giving correction to a student, is, I would assume in 99%, it's very about the student and the learning that's going on. But if that was interpreted the wrong way, do you have any documents? Do you have any processes that you can speak to that says, so in order to avoid these things, this is what I'm doing, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And it's currently not really there because it is new information to the industry. And the other thing I was going to say is I think a lot of the times where people are talking about is between teacher and student in terms of the touch. But what about when you've got student to student? Because I see beautiful contemporary pieces. I go to a lot of the full-time graduation concerts because I love watching it. And you see some really close contact between body parts.
Yeah.
Now, are there occasions where someone goes, okay, yeah, you two go and rehearse that over there. I'm going to work with the group. Are you opening yourself up to a situation where worst case someone does something inappropriate or worst case is accused of doing something?
Yeah.
So all of these processes, it's not just teacher-student. We've got to think of the student-to-student contact. And there are processes of just checking in with one another as a teacher before you choreograph something, asking students about where are your no-go zones or your no-touch zones.
Yeah.
And you can then adapt choreography to that if you want to honour their boundaries. Or it's just like, nope, this is my vision. Let's go. Yeah. So, there's the student to student, which I think sometimes I have heard studios it's a no touch zone.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it is just teacher to student.
Yeah.
They're not considering the choreography that happened because that is still a potential of boundaries being crossed, people being uncomfortable, if so more. I remember when I was young, I got picked for a duo, super excited, and I was not traumatized by that experience, but it was weird and it was uncomfortable. The person was older than me. I had never had any sort of contact with a person of the opposite sex. And then here I was rehearsing all the time. So there are processes, again, from the film and television world where you mark it and it might be only a handful of times that you do the full contact because then you're reducing the number of times that you have to feel the awkward and the weird, So there's lots of things that we can, I think, learn from these new industry practices and go, hey, it's an offer. You may very well have two dancers who are like, no, I love it. Let's go.
Yeah.
But we just can't assume that's how it's always been done. So let's just move forward.
Yeah. That brought back a memory for me. I would have only been about 12 years old at my first ballet school and I was wearing chorus heels. We were doing, I think it was all that jazz. Yeah, I would have been about 12, 13. And I had, some of the girls had to dress up as men.
Yes.
So I was a girl, but I actually had a real boy, a guy, and he was sweet. But he stood up with, his arms crossed like this, and I'm on the other side. I had to slide through his legs first.
Yeah.
My head hit his
There you go.
genitals
Yes. Yeah.
several times,
Yeah.
my face, and I'm this young girl. And I didn't feel good about it. And
No.
looking back now, he was older than me. He was
Mm.
maybe 3 years older than me, which is
Mm-hmm.
actually big for that age.
Yes. That's how I felt.
Yeah, and he was shy, and you could tell that he was as uncomfortable as I was, which made me feel comfortable. Do you know what I mean? It was weird. It made me feel, okay, well, at least we both don't want to be doing this. I don't feel like he wasn't, power over anything like that. But yeah, there was no, yeah.
And so in the film and television world, like there is no like pelvis to pelvis contact. It's always off center, or there's barriers offered or used, like because you don't, in a workplace situation, go to work and you shouldn't have genitalia touching.
Yeah.
Should we not maybe think about that in the dance world? Should we not have genitalia touching? And it can happen by accident. So could we offer some foam barriers for that really, like I said, beautiful storytelling, emotional, everyone's left in tears.
Yeah.
But it's so close.
It's so intimate. Yeah. And
I just don't think there's many conversations happening because it's new.
Wow. So do you run workshops for dance studios? Because this is amazing. And I feel like Australia would eat you up with your consent.
If only.
With your consent. Sorry.
Yes, I do. So I do the Wellbeing workshops where I try and go through. It is very yoga inspired, not the spiritual aspects. It is the science of breath and fine tuning, I think, alignment. I feel we know there's no regulation in the dance industry. You don't have to do any anatomy training. You don't have to do any training on how to teach. How do you scaffold? How do you differentiate? How do you provide feedback? Keeping the ethical boundaries, or, like there's not a lot of that. So the workshops have a little bit of anatomy in them as well as the well-being and just trying to show them that, you can condition and stretch and strengthen, but you actually walk out going, oh, that was really nice. And I've listened and I've gone inwards and I've not looked at that person and where they are in their split, I've closed my eyes. So I do those workshops and then I do the consent workshops as well.
Right.
And then I'm about to do like a wellbeing workshop for teachers so they can start to bring that into their lessons, because I think wellbeing and mental health is huge for everyone, but our teen population. It would be so easy to, at the end of class, do like a progressive muscle relaxant, and then students are letting go as part of their gentle cool down, but they've had a mindful moment at the same time. So yes, I do workshops, but I find the challenge is, you were talking before about like we can't sort of ignore it, we've got to get with it. I feel the challenge is because often what I'm teaching is not you can take a before and after, or you can't put the improvement in flexibility in 2 seconds on an Instagram page. I think it takes a certain dance studio owner to be wanting to find those things for their students to engage with it.
Yeah.
I have had workshops before, larger studios who I was going to go in and then got cancelled because we've got a performance prep instead. And I'm like, wow, this would be great performance prep actually, because it would be good for regulating nerves and calming and getting focus. But because it's not the whiz bang, cool routine.
And overtraining is another thing that's a problem. Overtraining before the performance, it's not great.
And the early specialization as well, I find is, I worry we're going to have broken little bodies, people who are so passionate about it, but before they can actually get to the professional world, they're either burnt out or they've got these little niggling injuries that they've pushed past because we just, anything for the team, can't say no. Yeah.
Speaking of, I tore all the ligaments in my right groin when I was 11 years old doing the can for a concert preparation and was told, you can't dance. You're not allowed to dance by the osteo. You had to go straight away. you've torn your ligaments,
Yeah.
like all of them.
Like ligaments, yes.
And your leg is shortened. But
Yeah.
I still danced in the concert, medicated up to my eyeballs.
Yes, yeah.
And then spent the next 6 weeks in agony on the couch. Now, I am now in chronic pain every day with that
Yes,
whole
yeah.
hip. you
Yeah.
know, and I'm paying for it now. But I was this 11-year-old girl, so it's like
Yeah.
I didn't really have a choice. It felt like the teacher's like, oh, no, you can just have some Panadol and Nurofen.
Yeah.
You'll be
And
fine.
that is, I think, it's that old school mentality of like, suck it up or just,
Yeah,
and it's finding that balance between the, oh, I'm tired, I need to sit out now. Like,
Yeah.
that's not what we're going
No.
to,
no.
but we are finding the balance between that. Yes, like your longevity, that's what's important right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I was the same. You're young, you don't think too far ahead.
No.
Now I'm older and I feel a few things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to spread the word that,
Yeah.
that excessive kick that you've
Oh,
got, it's not going to be worth it when you can't walk up a stair, or the knee drops and things like that.
Yeah.
It's not going to be great for you
No.
when you're older.
Yeah.
And that trophy, good for now, but not maybe in the long term.
Exactly. Oh.
Maybe we're just getting old.
Well, unfortunately, that's true for me.
I told you, I just turned 50, like
That's
literally a few
awesome.
days ago. So I was like,
You do not look 50.
okay, here we go.
Did it feel liberating at all? Did you embrace it? Or how?
Look, leading up to it, I was about like 50, like that's a big one.
Yeah.
But I think, I wasn't actually as impacted by it. I'm like, 50. And because I guess I am still moving a lot, and I'm not feeling like I'm 50. I don't know what 50 should feel like, but I'm not like, oh, I can't get up off the floor, or I'm feeling pretty good in my body, and so no, it wasn't too bad.
Watch out, world.
Yeah. Yeah. 60 on the other hand, that might be different. I don't know.
Love it. Oh, well, where can we find you? Let's put website details, because it's been such an honour and a privilege to speak with you and pick your brain.
But likewise, I think it's really, like, we obviously, I think, share so many similarities in terms of what we value, and so it's been amazing to talk to you too. And like I said, I really do think you're ahead of your time. Back then when you had that studio, that's like, wow.
Oh, I don't know.
Definitely.
That's very kind of you. Yeah. But I would really love to see some schools looking you up, finding how they can get you into their school. And you've got some programs, don't you, as well, on your website?
Yes, yeah. It outlines, I do the studio workshops, I do the teacher professional development. I can cater, you know what I mean? If a studio is wanting a particular thing on flexibility and how we can approach that, I offer a workshop on that, or a little bit of anatomy. Yeah.
Do you have, any final words of wisdom for any up-and-coming dancers or teachers?
I think we've all got to become more body aware. Listen to those instincts, and that will help you with injury prevention. It will help you with when a boundary is going to be crossed. It will just help you to recognise when something's not right for you. So, I think body awareness is a big thing that we could bring a little bit more into the dance world.
Well, thank you so, so much. You're just beautiful, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you today. And thank you for making yourself available. I feel very lucky. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you for having me. It's wonderful.